What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about what's going on with the market very quickly. Let me first say that I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. Anyways, when it comes to the market, SPY made an attempt to bounce off this trend line of support around this 444.25 zone. That's where this trend line happens to be. And it's making an attempt to try to hold above it, but it's still looking very weak at the same time. This is not much of a bounce. It's still very, very weak. It's trying to bounce, but it's just a very, very weak one. And so far, like I said, it looks super, super weak. I was expecting and predicting we would see some kind of bounce before this thing continued to fade. Instead, this thing just dropped and dropped and dropped with no bounce until like right about here where it's attempting to do so. But it dropped pretty hard before getting any sort of significant move. And this was once again quite tricky when it comes to the way it's predicted. So with this potentially happening, don't forget max pain happens to be at 440. If we break below this trend line, we're going to be watching 444 as critical support. If that fails us, there's 442, then there's 440 as major support if we end up going down there. Now for resistance, you're going to be watching 445 flats. That's the critical one to watch for. If that were to break, you're going to be watching 445.4, which is this previous resistance becoming, or previous support becoming resistance. And above that, we have 446. So far, it's still looking very weak, not really much of a good bounce so far. So we're going to be watching this carefully. For something else such as Tesla, I just want to mention that Tesla is looking a little bit better than SPY, as Tesla's trying to make an attempt to rebound. But looking at it, you could see Tesla, came down pretty hard, tried to rebound a little bit. It's actually not too far in the red. If you look at Tesla, it's only down let me just double check this. It's only down like 0.5%. Not that bad for Tesla standards. It dropped a little bit and made an attempt to bounce. It's trying, but the problem with Tesla is we have a lot of EMAs ahead of us. So if you look at like the 4-hour time frame, for example, Tesla was trying to bounce off the 20 EMA. These are acting as supports. And then for the resistance area, we have the 5-minute chart showing us where critical resistance happens to be. So Tesla's testing 274.75 as resistance, 275 flat, 275.75 above that, which is where the 50 and 200 EMAs happen to be. Those are the resistance levels for Tesla. For support, you're going to be watching 274 flats, and below that, we have 272.5 as critical support. Below that, if that breaks, we could come down to 271, followed by 270. As of right now, the market's looking relatively weak. Tesla's also looking kind of weak, so we're just going to be very careful when it comes to the way that the market's moving. And we're going to be watching this key support on SPY. It's still, not really getting a very significant bounce. It's trying to bounce, but it's just not looking that good. So we're just going to be watching it carefully and just be very careful. So we're approaching the support. We're at 444.5. SPY is starting to sink again. Failed to get that bounce so far, like a really significant one. So it's still looking weak. We're going to be watching to see if this level breaks. If it breaks, we could continue to sink lower. So watch that support very carefully in real time. For other stocks out there like the QQQ, this was a lot weaker than expected. I was anticipating that this would try to bounce a little bit before it continued to fade. Instead, this thing is just continuing to fade all day, and we're approaching 370. If that fails us, there's 368 and then 366. Also, don't forget, we have some resistance at 372.38, so that's slowing us down. Looking at Nvda, this is very weak. Nvda is continuing to sink. This thing is going to be approaching much lower levels as we just hit the 442 support, and that is likely going to fail. It's still looking very weak on the 4-hour time frame, and specifically when we look at Nvda, it's just not looking that great from a technical standpoint. Instead of trying to hold the inverse head and shoulders, we actually broke below critical supports, and now we're approaching this trend line right about here. In my opinion, as we were approaching this trend line, this is where Nvda was trying to rebound off of, but it's still looking weak. And if we do break below 442, I could easily see this thing coming into the mid 430s. Those could come pretty quickly. Nvidia is looking weak right now, so just watch the support at 442. If that fails us, it's going to start sinking even lower. I also want to add that other stocks like the VIX actually got a bounce. It's now trying to rebound. If you look at the smaller time frames, not a very strong bounce, but it's attempting to bounce off this bullish divergence. I wasn't expecting it to be like this, but it is what it is, right? We just want to be open-minded. The dollar, this is very interesting. The dollar is actually dropping, and the market is just continuing to drop with it. Typically, the dollar should be pumping during times like this, but it's still up overall compared to where it was last week. So normally you'd want to see the dollar pumping when the market's down. That's what typically happens, and yet the market is still looking relatively weak. So we're just going to be watching these levels carefully. One stock that's doing relatively well compared to the market is still Tesla, because Tesla's only down 0.6%. That's not even that bad. It's still trying to hold up, so watch this choppy price action, some sideways price action here. Watch support and resistance, and just know, guys, the market is looking relatively weak. But don't forget to watch the critical supports I mentioned, especially on SPY if you're watching it. So please, I want the best for all of you. Be very patient in a market like this and do what you have to do. I thank you all for listening. Have a great day, and peace out.